The Minister will be well aware that 99% of internet traffic is carried on undersea cables, and clearly the Russians and other enemies would seek to disrupt that. Will the Minister look at utilising autonomous minesweepers that can therefore be deployed to protect our undersea cables? And in particular, will he commit to be looking at introducing that in the Black Sea if there is actually a truce between Russia and Ukraine, so that their cables are protected as well, because that's part of the NATO infrastructure?
The global economy's dependency on undersea cables has reached a point of mutual assured disruption. We are no longer talking about losing access to social media. We are talking about the physical decapitation of the global financial clearing system. Tomorrow morning, you wake up and the world feels off. Not a power outage off, but something more fundamental. You reach for your phone, the digital heartbeat of your existence, but the heartbeat is flatlining. Your messages hang in an eternal sending state. Your banking app is a void. The local grocery store is turning people away because their point-of-sale systems can't verify a single transaction. In the newsrooms that still have a signal, a word starts to circulate: degraded mode. This isn't just a glitch in your router. Across the Atlantic, the London Stock Exchange has halted trading. In the Pacific, the logistics hubs of Singapore and Hong Kong have gone blind, unable to track the 50,000 container ships currently navigating the high seas. We have been sold a beautiful, ethereal lie: the cloud. The term suggests that our data, our money, and our modern civilization exist in a nebulous, untouchable atmosphere, beamed down from satellites. But the reality is far grittier. The internet isn't in the sky, it's on the silt. It's a physical, fragile, and highly contested network of glass tubes, no thicker than a garden hose, resting on the crushing darkness of the ocean floor. 99% of all international data traffic flows through these cables. They carry $10 trillion in financial transactions every single day. They are the nervous system of globalization, connecting the cloud services, government networks, and military command systems that allow the world to function as a single unit. And that makes them the ultimate geopolitical choke point. In the next 20 minutes, we are going deep. We aren't looking at the software, we're looking at the hardware of power. From the secret naval units of Russia to the digital Silk Road of China, we're going to see how the 21st century's most important battlefield is being drawn 3 miles beneath the waves. This is the geopolitics of the undersea cable. Chapter 1: The anatomy of a choke point. To understand why these cables are a weapon, you have to understand the physics of their vulnerability. A submarine cable is a masterpiece of engineering, but it is fundamentally limited by the laws of optics. At its core are pairs of fiber optic strands, glass thinner than a human hair, carrying pulses of light. But light, even in the purest glass, loses strength over distance. Every 60 to 100 kilometers, the signal must be boosted. This is done by a repeater, a high-tech optical amplifier housed in a beryllium copper pressure vessel designed to withstand the weight of 3 miles of water. Here's the catch: these repeaters need electricity. This means every cable is also a high-voltage electrical circuit, powered by huge landing stations on the coast. This creates the first layer of geopolitical vulnerability: the landing station. There are only about 500 significant cable landing points for the entire global web. Many of them are concentrated in predictable, exposed coastal sites. If you control the point where the light becomes data, you control the metadata of an entire region. This is why landing rights have become the new territory in international law. But there's a second vulnerability: the depth. In the deep ocean, cables are unarmored, just a thin layer of polyethylene protecting the fiber. They are designed for the stillness of the abyss. But as they approach the shore, they must be armored with heavy steel wires to protect against anchors and fishing nets. We think of these as invulnerable arteries of progress. In reality, they are fragile glass threads held together by high-voltage current in an environment where we have almost no eyes and ears. Historically, cable breaks were boring. 70% of faults are caused by fishing trawlers or dragging anchors. It was a maintenance issue, not a military one. But in the last decade, that normality has become the perfect camouflage for a new type of conflict. Because when cables break constantly for ordinary reasons, a hostile actor doesn't need to invent a new way to hurt you. They just need to hide inside the noise. Chapter 2. The Great Bifurcation, US versus China. For nearly 3 decades, the undersea world was a Western-aligned monopoly. 3 companies, Subcom from the USA, NEC from Japan, and Alcatel from France, built almost everything. The internet was, for all intents and purposes, an American-led global commons. But then came the rise of HMN Tech, formerly Huawei Marine. China realized early on that if they wanted to challenge Western hegemony, they couldn't just build apps like TikTok, they had to build the pipes. Through the digital Silk Road, China has aggressively funded cable projects across Africa, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. The most famous is the Peace Cable, which stands for Pakistan and East Africa connecting Europe. It bypasses the traditional Western nodes, landing directly in Marseille. The US response has been swift and brutal. Through a secretive interagency committee known as Team Telecom, the US government has effectively blocked multiple major cables from landing in Hong Kong or Chinese-owned territories. They blocked the Pacific Light Cable Network, funded by Google and Meta, from connecting Los Angeles to Hong Kong, forcing it to truncate in Taiwan and the Philippines. Between 2020 and 2024, the US government successfully diverted or blocked at least 6 major trans-Pacific cable projects that involve Chinese contractors or landing points. The goal is clean infrastructure, a physical layer of the web that is free from Chinese state surveillance. This is what we call the Great Bifurcation. The internet is splitting into 2 physical layers, a Western-aligned blue network and a Sino-centric red network. This isn't just about speed, it's about data sovereignty. If you own the cable, you own the metadata. If you own the metadata, you own the intelligence advantage. We are entering the era of the Splinternet, where the physical seafloor determines which side of the digital Iron Curtain you land on. This competition has turned tiny island nations into strategic heavyweights. Palau, the Marshall Islands, and the Solomon Islands are now the scenes of a bidding war. Not for their land, but for their landing rights. Because whoever lands the cable first determines the security architecture of the region for the next 25 years. Chapter 3. The Gray Zone, Sabotage and Tapping. Case Study, the Baltic Crisis of 2023. In October 2023, a subsea gas pipeline and a telecom cable between Finland and Estonia were severed. The culprit? A Chinese-owned vessel, the Nunu Polar Bear, which allegedly dragged its 6-ton anchor for 180 kilometers along the seafloor, perfectly striking the infrastructure. Was it an accident?
We had a strong reason to believe that it was an intentional activity from their side.
Is this Russia?
I can only say that there is clear connection between Russian shadow fleet and these incidents. It's clear.
In the world of gray zone conflict, the answer doesn't matter. The result is a region in economic and political shock, with no clear way to prove intent. This is the new normal. Hostile actors like Russia's GUGI, the main directorate of deep sea research, operate specialized research vessels like the Yantar. These ships are equipped with deep sea submersibles that can loiter at depths of 6,000 meters. Their mission isn't just to cut cables, it's to map and tap. Tapping a fiber optic cable is incredibly difficult. You can't just splice into it without being noticed. But sophisticated submersibles can use a technique called microbending. By bending the fiber just enough, a tiny fraction of the light leaks out. This light contains the data packets. With a sensitive enough receiver, you can sniff the traffic of an entire continent without the cable owner ever knowing you're there. But the real threat in a pre-war scenario is kinetic sabotage. Imagine the Luzon Strait, the digital aorta of Asia. It's a narrow gap between Taiwan and the Philippines, where almost all cables connecting the Western Pacific to Southeast Asia converge. If a conflict breaks out over Taiwan, China doesn't need to sink every US carrier. They just need to accidentally sever the 15 cables in the Luzon Strait. A digital blockade is cheaper than a naval one. By severing connectivity, you don't just stop the internet, you stop the ability of a nation to coordinate its defense, to calm its markets, and to communicate with its allies. This is ambiguity as power. If a cable breaks, is it an anchor? Is it a shark? Or is it a message? By the time you finish the forensic investigation, the strategic objective has already been achieved. Undersea cables are the most important infrastructure you never think about. They are the silent foundations of our global civilization. But as we move into an era of great power competition, they are moving from the background to the front lines. When we talk about the future of war, don't just look at satellites, look down. The first strike of the next world war won't be seen by radar. It will be felt by your bank account, your communication apps, and the sudden, deafening silence of a world disconnected. If you want to understand the world through its hidden mechanisms, subscribe to AHA Ledger. We go deep so you don't stay in the dark. Tell me in the comments, is your country digitally sovereign or just a tenant on someone else's cable?